Global agriculture is facing a complex mix of rising input costs, supply chain disruptions, and shifting farmer demand, from manufacturing pressures on equipment makers to changing purchasing behavior at the farm level. The machinery market is at the center of these dynamics. I'm Johanna Bota, and to help us unpack what this means for farmers, OEMs, and ultimately global food production, I'm joined by Ben Klieve, Senior Research Analyst at Benchmark. Welcome, Ben, and lovely to have you back. Let's start with the supply side. What are you seeing in terms of how these pressures are translating into production decisions for major OEMs?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Johanna. So on the machinery side, the dynamics right now are certainly there's a lot of variables that OEMs are considering. So far, though, I think fortunately the ag machinery market is like a lot of pockets of the industrial economy, in that rising input costs, be it energy or steel or what have you, and then general trade disruptions. 2.5 months after the initial U.S. attacks on Iran have not really impacted output yet. It certainly is something that the OEMs are watching, and that risk is certainly elevated today versus a few months ago. But so far, there hasn't been, I think, any material direct effect on overall levels of supply of ag machinery as a direct result of the outbreak of war with Iran.
Okay, that's interesting because I think a lot of the key components in today's machinery do depend on global supply chains. So how much have geopolitical tensions and energy shocks disrupted access to things like semiconductors or other key components?
Yeah, so there certainly is an effect. The challenge of semiconductors in the machinery space has actually been a long one. So dating well before the outbreak of war. There's a lot more technology that's embedded within tractors
Hmm.
than a lot of people probably realize. I mean, the in support of the automation and the guidance vision systems, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of semiconductors embedded within large new machines. General semiconductor availability has been an issue for some time for these OEMs, and that certainly hasn't changed. Other parts availability, the dynamics around, as you noted, geopolitical tensions causing trade disruptions, energy shocks. That's all been an issue. So far, it hasn't resulted in a dramatic impact on the space, though. If you think back a few years ago, coming out of the pandemic,
Hmm.
when the supply chain disruptions were really pronounced, that was an extraordinary situation, and
Yeah.
and there's certainly a lot of people monitoring the situation, but we're not back to where we were a few years ago by a long shot just yet. So
Okay.
heightened risk, but we're not there yet.
All right, understood. So let's talk about demand now then. When farmers start tightening budgets, how does machinery spending compare to things like seed, fertilizer, or crop protection?
Yeah, so this is the big dynamic in the machinery space today. So on the of all the different buckets of major inputs that a farmer purchases, machinery is one of the more elastic ones.
Hmm.
I mean, if you're a farmer, you have to buy seed. If you have a plot of land and you don't put seed in it, you're not a
Of
farmer.
course,
So
yeah.
they are spending money on seed
Hmm.
and the best genetics for that seed at that. And then subsequently, you are farmers are have very inelastic demand for the herbicides, pesticides, fungicides that protect that crop, and then to a little bit lesser degree, but still a high degree of purchasing, continuing on the fertilizer side, even though those prices are obviously up as well.
Yeah.
Machinery is a different subject. It's a lot easier for a farmer to wait a year to buy a new piece of machinery, or maybe trade down from new machinery to used, in looking for a cheaper option. So the farmer spending on machinery in general is much more elastic than other inputs, and that is the most directly responsive kind of aspect of the machinery space to the current economic conditions for the farmer.
Okay, so well then if machinery is one of the more flexible spending categories, how have rising fuel and fertilizer costs influenced farmer decisions around maintaining or replacing this equipment?
Yeah, well, it unfortunately has made a bad situation worse. So for several years, well before the U.S. attack on Iran, the farmer income statement has been in bad shape. And then today, with costs like fuel, like fertilizer going up, it's yeah, really just making their difficult financial situation even more problematic. Fuel, for instance, that's diesel costs are you call it 3-4% of variable costs for your median row crop farmer in the U.S. You were already losing money though going into this, and so if your 3-4% cost goes up to 6-7%, it makes your loss that much more pronounced. Similar dynamic also for fertilizer. So for these farmers that are unfortunately now losing even more money in this environment, instead of buying new machines, they unfortunately have to pay for that higher gas. They have to pay for that
Right,
higher
of course.
fertilizer
Yeah.
cost. So farmers are really continuing to delay new machinery purchases. And that's the big dynamic now in the space. I mean, you look at the major OEMs, the Deeres and CNHs of the world. Large ag machinery this year is expected to be down 15-20% after multiple down years already, and that's purely on the demand side. So their supply is coming down to meet demand. That demand is really quite stale right now.
So if the farmers are putting off these new purchases and leaning more on used equipment, how does that start to affect productivity on the ground?
So it's certainly, especially for the farmers that have been delaying this for multiple years in a row now.
Yeah.
You can only patch up a machine so many times. So
Hmm.
certainly, there are absolutely kind of very specific situations where these delayed purchases are impacting their productivity, their yield.
Yeah.
But this is not the biggest risk yet to excuse me, the overall output for the farmer is not necessarily that as directly related to the machinery space as one may think. The used market, where a lot of farmers are turning for machinery today,
Hmm.
there are still some very good machines that are gently used, generally pre-loved, if you will. And so also you can buy some aftermarket technologies to improve the efficiency of those used machines. So you can work within the current environment here to not really compromise your yield too much yet. But certainly that has happened, I'm sure, from time to time, but it's not a major effect
Okay.
right now.
Okay, understood. And what about policy? Does federal support actually move the needle when it comes to farmers investing in new machinery?
So I tell investors that are passionate about the free market to avert their eyes when they're looking at the agriculture sector. There's always been a degree of federal support for the sector, and that has picked up over the last year and will likely continue. The federal support for farmers is something that's absolutely important to keep them afloat. But as it pertains to the machinery space specifically,
Hmm.
right now, most farmers are indicating that they are not going to necessarily go out and buy new machines with this federal support. Rather, they're going to effectively go pay down the credit card. So that those elevated diesel costs, elevated fertilizer costs, the seed costs, they're paying the retailer for those inputs with that federal support versus going out and buying a new machine. So not that it won't have any effect, but most farmers with that federal support are going to go pay down their working capital as opposed to investing in big capex projects.
Okay, well, that makes total sense. Let's move over to talk about, I'm sorry, let's move on and talk about innovation. Are autonomous and electric vehicles really making a difference in the AG machinery yet?
I love this question. So they're not major disruptors yet.
Okay.
I'll bucket this into two different. You asked about both autonomous solutions and also
Yeah.
electric vehicles.
Hmm.
I'll bracket this a couple different ways. So on the autonomous side, we talked about some kind of aftermarket kind of bolt-on technologies that can make existing machinery more autonomous.
Hmm.
Those are absolutely continuing. Farmers are much more willing to buy a small piece of technology that they can bolt onto their existing machine to make it more efficient. There's no doubt that that's continuing. On the major row crop producer side, electric vehicles aren't really efficient enough yet to be a major disruptor. So for most row crop farmers, electric vehicles aren't really much an option just yet. Now for the specialty crop side, so your fruits and vegetables,
Yeah.
those farmers do have better access to electric vehicles. Unfortunately, there was a pretty significant bankruptcy of one of the leading kind of startup OEMs in this
Oh,
space a couple months ago. Not related to the current geopolitical climate,
okay.
but the unfortunately those solutions that are both electric and autonomous in nature, The autonomy side has been difficult to really master. So, these emerging technologies are certainly coming up. And I think especially solutions that enable kind of swarms of smaller vehicles to be autonomous. This is really something that has still quite a bit of disruptive potential. The large OEMs are still certainly leaning into this, but that hasn't scaled enough yet to where I think you can call that disruptive just yet.
Okay, thank you for that. And one last thing before we let you go. If we zoom out a bit, how does all of this, the machinery, inputs, supply chain pressure, translate into risks for global food production?
So it certainly is a risk. It's a much more of a risk to the farmer's bottom line than it is overall production levels for now. But we'll see how long this threat how long this input cost environment continues, because it certainly is raising the risk of global food security, into next year. Right now, more of the risk is to food security and total levels of production are Mother Nature related. So, if you've got drought conditions in Brazil affecting their corn crop, drought conditions in the U.S. affecting the wheat crop, but those prices are going up, that's an issue. But that's not really related to the conflict. But certainly the longer this goes on, there's more risk embedded within the food chain looking into 27. In general, be it machinery or all these inputs combined.
Of course. Ben, lovely speaking with you again. Thank you so much for your time. And thank you to our viewers for watching. For more financial content, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel.